Hello everyone, this is なお。はい、ということで今回は海外のお友達に英語と中国語っていう別々の言語同士をどうやって習得してきたか。英語ってネイティブだけじゃなくていろんな国の方が話すと思うので、日本人が自分にとって慣れてない英語っていう言語を学ぶのにどんな風に勉強していったらいいかとか、その辺の外国語を学ぶコツっていうのの経験からシェアしてもらおうと思います。Be part of it. So, this is Molly, my friend.Hello!
Konnichiwa.
Yeah, so she basically speaks Chinese and English, sure, and she knows a little bit of Japanese too.
Barely.
So she speaks at least 2 languages. So I think it really deep down to your how you grew up in what kind of life you've been so far. So could you give us a little details about your as your self introduction and also how you've been involved with those 2 languages and how you've been learning it?
Yes. Yeah. So I was born in China, but then adopted by a white American family and raised in America since a very, very young age, about 18 months old. Yes, very baby. So when I was growing up, I was growing up in an English-speaking household in America, of course. So English is my first and dominant language. And I have started learning Chinese since I started my undergraduate studies. So Chinese is a foreign second language to me, despite being ethnically Chinese.
So 18, 19 when you started
Around
learning?
18,
Oh,
yes.
That's grown up.
Yes.
That's very great. I'm just very curious how you've been doing that. So,
yeah, it's been hard.
Yeah.
Even I've been speaking and learning Chinese for maybe about 10 years now, and it still feels like a foreign language, not like a super natural thing. I still have to think really hard sometimes. And oftentimes when I'm speaking, even if I can get the words out, I can almost feel like I'm definitely saying the grammar or the word order or the sentence structure a little bit wrong. And I often, of course, worry about my pronunciation. But at the same time, I have reached a level of fluency that I feel confident enough to just sometimes say words and hope that the other Chinese person knows what I'm trying to say, and they'll as long as I get the point, the meaning across, I've sometimes not worried so much about.
So you don't feel any
perfect.
struggle or problems when it comes to just the casual communication with people in Chinese?
Definitely, definitely everyday conversation. You can speak with them pretty freely. I'm definitely still making a lot of mistakes when I speak with them, but not so bad that they don't understand what I'm trying to get at, unless I'm talking about something really complicated or
change the
really
words
specific.
and context and just reveal them and they can understand.
Yeah,
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much. So let's get into it. From my point of view, one thing that triggered me was that you started learning Chinese as your foreign second language. Can we say that?
Yes, definitely.
When you were 18, 19, a little grown up, not a little child.
Yes.
So same for me, I studied English when I became a junior high school student. So 14, 13-ish. And oftentimes people say that you have to start practicing English when you are really small because the pronunciation and everything is very different. So you gotta be used to it from when you are a little. I didn't have that environment. In Japan, we all at the same time start learning English as a school subject from junior high school. So I studied it in the way that everybody else. So for many Japanese people, when they try to start learning English, when they become grown-ups, it really depends on the person, but in many of the cases, they just go into various kinds of ways to study vocabularies, grammars, and pronunciations, because a lot of people say different things. You should do this first, you should do this second, and they just feel like spinning their heads around those bunch of information. So they sometimes feel lost in the way to find the best way to master that language. Do you have any best ways that you found?
I think it really depends on how your brain works, because my brain, so if you're like me and you have a brain that thinks very mathematically, scientifically,
logical thinking.
Very logical thinking, versus some of my more artistic friends, they kind of go off vibes. They go off of intuition, and they kind of pick up a sense or an intuition. I don't do that. So I think very logically, and so for me, with a very logic-minded brain, knowing the rules and then just trying to seeing the rules almost like building blocks and then trying to like piece them together to form the house that I'm trying, which is the sentence that I'm trying. So putting the building blocks together through pure logic is for me. I guess now that I'm advanced enough in Chinese too, I'm reaching a point where there are certain building blocks or grammatical aspects that come a bit more naturally and quickly. I guess I've been in Japan for about 10 days and I've just been trying to do at least the bare minimum in Japanese, and I feel like thinking about trying to express something in Japanese that I would know how to say in English, of course. Like, you and I have talked about how different the grammar is between English and Japanese. So you say verb, then object. Like, do you have mugicha that you could serve me like at a restaurant? But then like here, say the tea, and then you say the verb of like having. And then also Japanese has all of those like particles like ga and ka and ni and ko and stuff. So like that's also very unique to Japanese that we don't really have in English. I guess we have other prepositions. So slowly building up, and I feel like there's been a couple times where I'm like want to ask questions to the front desk staff at a hotel that I've been at, and even though it'll be a sentence I wouldn't know until I Google it, but trying to pick out, okay, this is the verb, this is the object, this is the particle, this verb is like the conjugation of...
You try to spread into the blocks of the categories.
Exactly, I'm trying to see each piece of the blocks.
Oh, that's very interesting.
To understand, and to me, because I'm so logical. I don't know if I explained it very well.
To summarize it, you say grammar is very important, but you start with the very basic and short and easy things, like only verb and object, kind of like in Japanese. So it's very interesting. Do you mean like when you talked about the block things, you really imagine like blue blocks, red blocks, or whatever? Like just
kind of actually.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I do that. I
you
used
do that
to do that too. Because unless we visualize it, like we can't really fully understand it. Like you try to solve questions and everything, you feel like you got it, but like when you really try to tell something to a different person, like everything just gets messy. And I can't really push up even one word. So I think it's very important to, just by studying very easy stuff, you just categorizing, tidying up things in the room, kind of like maybe feel that.
And figuring out, okay, this goes here,
it's here, it's there, like I put this here.
Yeah, categorizing and starting with very short sentences and then slowly lengthening it.
And try to speak it out.
Yeah. The hardest part, of course, is finding someone to practice with, to speak it out loud too, so that they can confirm if you're doing it correctly or not. And that's really hard, even for me to find opportunities like that if I'm not in China or Taiwan or somewhere that speaks, that the dominant language is the foreign language that I'm trying to learn. And so I'm sure that that's common here as well.
Do you have any like ideal level or ideal timing for you to just find someone to talk to after you finished practicing by yourself?
I think it is hard because when you are really early beginner, you feel like you can barely say anything. So it feels like I don't even know how to carry a conversation because I literally can't speak enough for that to feel like a full conversation. And it's not till you reach a certain threshold that you're like, okay, now I can kind of have a conversation maybe. I feel like the biggest thing that helped me was studying abroad in China. At that point, I studied abroad in China after 1 year of studying in the classroom, and that really changed everything. When I walk outside of my room, the dominant language is Chinese, and I have no choice but to use it. But I feel like there are so many services online now too. In the Chinese class I'm in right now, we have a program called Talk Abroad where you pay a certain fee, or the school pays a fee on a student's behalf, and you can schedule a 30-minute video call with a native Chinese speaker and have a back and forth. And the native Chinese speaker speaks a decent amount of English, so that if you're really struggling, they'll speak in English. And so like I would suspect there might be similar programs that you can pay for where it's only 30 minutes. Hopefully the other speaker would actually speak a lot of Japanese or English, so that if you really need help, they can coach you through in your native language. And if it's only 30 minutes, it gives me so much pressure. I feel like that would have helped me a lot when I was just beginning Chinese. If you ever have a chance to go abroad,
the environment is very, very important.
When I was studying abroad, I was living with a lot of other international students. So I was always around a lot of Europeans and others who spoke a lot of English. And so it was really tempting to only hang out with them and speak English. Also, sometimes go by myself to a restaurant or to a shop and embarrass myself asking a question in a really clumsy way. But I feel like I've also found that people, when you're really genuine about like, I'm sorry, my English or my Chinese or my Japanese is like not that good, but like I'm really trying, people tend to be very, very nice about that.
You say it first and they understand.
Okay,
so you hit all those every opportunity to try to speak with someone in that language is very important.
Yeah, it is definitely the most important, but it's unfortunately also the hardest.
I know. So putting yourself in that environment, I would say, is very key to go through this process. Like vocabularies, like memorizing and stuff. You talked about the grammar rules. You start with the easy short ones and try to speak it out. But Japanese people struggle with it. They don't have any English vocabularies in their brain in the first place, so they start just building them up by the scratch. So what about the vocabularies? How have you been increasing your vocabularies in your head?
I feel like with Chinese, and then even with just the 10 days that I've been here, it's not trying to force the sentence that I want to say into the vocabulary that I already know, but force my vocabulary to expand into the sentence I actually want to say. If I'm trying to say a sentence in Chinese and I know how to structure the sentence, I know almost all the words, but like there's one word in English that actually I don't know what the right word for this translation would be, and so then I'll look it up on Google, on a dictionary, and I just put it in the assignment, and then my teacher will mark it out because it's wrong. Or when I've been here, say, I know that in general to ask like, oh, do you have this? I can say the thing and then ga arimasu ka, but like maybe I don't know what the Japanese word is for the thing that I want, so I look it up in the dictionary, right? Or more often recently, it's been like a verb. Like the last hotel I was at, my room card kept not working, and so I was like room card ga, and I was like, I have no idea what verb to use, so I had to look that up. So then I learned the verb like tsukaimasen, that it doesn't work. But it's like, it's embarrassing because I'm like looking at the word on my phone and I'm like, am I gonna pronounce it correctly? Like, or what if I'm mid-sentence and I just forget, and then I have to like and I have to look it up again because I forgot, and it is very stressful and embarrassing. But to force myself to learn this new word like tsukaimasen instead of like room kado, like to force myself to use a new verb.
So if you meet that situation, you gotta force yourself to know everything.
Instead of forcing my sentence into the vocabulary, force my vocabulary into my sentence. Even if it takes longer, even if it's more embarrassing, because you're gonna use a word, like what if the translator is giving you the wrong word and it's not what you're, right? But
I know. So I think first of all, you create the environment to talk in that language, and then if you hit the words that you cannot really translate from your language, then you look it up and you try to use it. So lastly, probably you know some of it, but I have been spreading this method of my own, like 1 minute talk.
I've seen some of your videos.
It just simply, it says like 1 minute you speak in that language. But I think many of the people, Japanese, are very struggling with finding their opportunities to speak English, and some of them try to speak with like those online English teachers, but they sometimes, like the teachers who lead the conversations, and they just say some of the vocabularies not in a sentence, and then the teacher takes the lead, and it seems like they had a conversation, but from their perspective, they don't feel like they created the conversation and did not deliver what they wanted to say. So that's one struggle, but they cannot really communicate well with that person because they only speak in English and a little Japanese. So I always say that you can make many mistakes in speaking, but you gotta fix them, you gotta correct them after you maybe speak, and then you can hit all of those pronunciations that you didn't know, all of those right vocabularies you wanted to use, and obviously sentences too. I wanted to ask your thoughts on this when they can't study abroad.
Yes, I agree. It's hard. I know I talked a lot about video online tutors, but that is still hard because I've had instances where I'm speaking with Chinese friends or an online Chinese tutor, and they might give me the correction, but then you want to let the conversation keep having a sense of like flow, so you kind of let it move on before you have the chance to fully like absorb it, and it feels like you're being troublesome if you're like, oh wait, let me say back what you said. So if I say a sentence wrong and they say, no, this is how you would say the sentence properly, and then we just move on with the conversation, but then I sometimes have to be like, oh wait, can I try to say the whole thing to feel it like locking in my brain, and that's embarrassing too, because you feel like you're holding up the conversation. That's one of those things where you have to be you have to learn to be really embarrassing yourself, because that's a part of the language practice. But I'm not even always good at that. Sometimes I'm just like writing down the note and I'm like, oh, I'll try to revisit this later, and then I forget to revisit it later. But I agree that when I'm given a correction, the best thing for me to do is to be like, okay, wait, let me say the whole sentence back the correct way that you said I should say it, and like say it a couple times even to lock it in. But that's really hard to...
Yeah, you always should ask for your time you correct by yourself. But the whole point could be you embarrass yourself.
It's pretty much just learn to embarrass yourself.
Without embarrassing yourself, you probably could not overcome this journey, I would say. Right? Because I had a lot of embarrassing moments. I actually started speaking English when I studied debating in English. There was this club activity for that.
Wow, that's cool.
That time, I every single day embarrassed myself. Like, they give me like certain amount of time because it's just a game. So 1 minute, 2 minutes, it's just that still. So I just like stand in front of everyone, including teachers and adults and like the friends. For this 1 minute straight, I only could have said, I think, and that's all. That continued for such a long time, maybe a few months. So that's maybe the whole point, probably.
Yeah. I've embarrassed myself already on this trip. I went into a konbini and I was trying to ask if they had a particular item and if I could buy it there or something. And instead of saying like kaimasu ka, I said kairimasu ka. And they looked at me like, and I was like, and then I just went sumimasen and I just left. And then I looked on my phone and I was like, oh, I said kairimasu ka instead of kairu.
That's very great. You could have reached to that point like you said that long, because it's very subtle sound, right?
And that's why I got them confused in my head, because they sound similar enough as an English speaker that I forgot that they're actually very different.
One last question. How do you switch your brain into Chinese from English?
Oh, that's really hard. I feel like even for me, who is at this point relatively advanced proficiency level in Chinese, the first 20 minutes of Chinese class every day, I don't know what's going on. Like, my brain is lagging behind the teacher because, it's kind of a transition to get back into thinking in Chinese, absorbing like someone speaking to me in Chinese, and then being able to respond really quickly. And so it's definitely hard. That switch is really hard. And I'm always very impressed when I see people, for example, in Hong Kong, where they speak Cantonese, Mandarin, and English. They're like swapping between the three so quickly. And I don't know how they do it. But I guess if I have the luxury of kind of setting the environment for myself to switch my brain from English to Chinese, for example, if I'm starting a conversation with a Chinese speaker in America, if I try to direct the conversation in a way that like we're starting off with really simple sentences, and then it's after a couple minutes in that I maybe will start to give more complex and longer responses or ask more complex questions. But that it depends on the other speaking too, and especially if they are like a Chinese auntie who speaks with a very heavy accent or dialect. It doesn't matter how long I speak to them, I don't know what they're saying when their dialect is really heavy.
Probably there's no like magic like instantly changing something when you can do in the conversation.
A little bit of prep. If I know that I'm about to enter Chinese space, when I go to Chinese class, the first 20 minutes, I feel like I'm like 5 words behind what the teacher is saying rather than like right up pace with her. But if I wake up early enough and I study Chinese for 30 minutes before I go to class, then I'll have like kind of prepared myself. So I guess if you know you're about to a foreigner, and we don't always know if we're going to, but if you know you're about to, preparing yourself with some review, I feel like can help. It's like a warm up. It's like you want to warm up before you like do a sport. And so
do you suggest like understanding grammars then, like as the prep? How do you suggest to prep?
Well, class is easy because I'll review whatever class materials I have. So review if you know the material you're going to cover, because like for a class, you'll have a textbook, you'll have a curriculum. If I know I'm going to leave the hotel here in Japan and I know what tasks I want to do when I go out, reminding myself what sentences I know, I will likely want to ask, where's the bathroom? Or do you have this? Or then looking things up and preparing myself for at least the most basic sentences that I think I might use. Like you said, the most basic grammar. I think it's really easy to get bogged down by the more advanced stuff when we're not there yet. But feeling okay, like starting with just the most basic stuff and maybe just like staying there and like not trying to get ahead of ourselves, if that makes sense. Like don't try to go too fast. It's okay to stay in this one very beginner level spot for a long time and then get really, really, really good at that. Because once you have a stronger foundation of like the easy stuff,
you'll never forget.
I've really not tried to do any sentences more complicated than something ga verb. Like, and maybe a ka at the end if I wanted a question. But any Japanese sentences longer than that.
It says a lot of things though. If you have much vocabularies and then you can express many things.
Especially with conjugation. I think because verb conjugations are so hard both in English and in Japanese. If I stick with the object, ga, verb, maybe a ka, make a question. But then I'm focused on like learning different verbs with that vocabulary, is learning how they all conjugate. And even though I feel maybe kind of lame because I'm only speaking simple sentences, but I'm building up my vocabulary. And then when I'm learning the conjugation, being more familiar with that. And then maybe after that, I can start doing more stuff with other sentence structures.
Like switching in between different languages, so you review it and get used to it. And I think you don't necessarily have to be in a class all the time for the language, but if you have this routine that you constantly try to kind of touch the language, and then you can just review what you learned the day before, and then you get used to it easily. So thank you so much. Probably that's all. Do you have any tips for Japanese who try to speak English, because English very like global, everyone uses it, and so obviously so that people in Japan try to be able to use it. So do you have any tips for them? Like pretty simple, easy ones.
Be okay embarrassing yourself. I would say learn basic sentence structures, but then learn a lot of vocabulary for a basic sentence. So even if you're speaking with the same sentence structure over and over, but if you're building up your vocabulary, that is probably actually like an easier, faster way to get better at communicating your idea, even if you feel like you're not using anything very advanced.
So for in English, I'd say subject, verb, object. Like, I bought what?
Go to the store, I went to the subject, verb, object. And it's okay to communicate everything in that one sentence structure. And if you get really good at that and you learn how to insert all sorts of new vocabulary into that, as well as all those verb conjugations, then once you are ready to do more complicated, longer sentences, you're going to be a lot stronger at that.
Yes, foundation is everything.
Foundation is key.
Okay, so great. Thank you so much. That was Mori.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we get some lunchtime, cafe time later, and we'll have a fun time. So bye.
Bye.
はい、どうでしたかね。いつもと違って全編英語の内容になってましたけど、ぜひ皆さんも英語を勉強するモチベーションだったり、英語を勉強するコツとして簡単な文法からでもたくさんいろんな単語を使って表現するようにするとか、ぜひ役立ててみてください。あとはリスニングの教材として普通に使っていただくのもいいかなと思うので、発音を聞き取ってちゃんと聞き取れてるかなっていうふうに字幕を確認しながら聞いてみたりとかっていうふうにも使ってもらえたらいいかなと思います。これからも英語のこんなようなコンテンツも配信していけたらなと思うので、これからも見たいよって方はぜひチャンネル登録もお願いします。今回ね、英語を話せるように外国語を話せるようになるコツってことで話してきたんですけど、私が留学しないでも英語を話せるようになってきた話せるための勉強方法っていうのを LINE の方で皆さんにお配りしてるんで、それも気になるよって方はぜひ概要欄から公式 LINE を追加してもらって受け取ってください。今回の内容が面白かったよかったって思ってくださった方はいいねボタンとコメントにご感想など質問もお待ちしてます。So thank you so much for today's watching video to the end, and I hope I can see you guys very soon. Bye!